But I'm going to start by apologising to all of you who are watching this and would love nothing more than to be sitting at a very comfortable bar this St. Patrick's Day. But I'm here, and it's all for a good reason, and that's to help you create some wonderfully tasty, delicious cocktails from the comfort of your own home. And here to help me is Vernon Fox from the Lough Brewing Company. Vernon, great to have you with us. The last I heard about you, you were over in Philadelphia or some beautiful place on a very successful trade mission. Tell us what happened.
That's correct, Malachy. We were over on a trade mission with the council in November of last year. We had a very successful mission over there. We visited a few distilleries and we got ourselves in front of the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. We had set up the project at the tail end of 2018 into 2019. We had tested the local market with a range of beers and spirits based on the stories of our hometown in Lough and also around Lough Neagh. And we were reasonably successful in testing that and validating that we had a proposition. So we packed a suitcase, we packed some samples, we put our brand and our story together, and the Liquor Control Board loved it. We had an immediate success at a scale that you wouldn't find should you try to hunt that down in Ireland for maybe a year or two. So we were rapidly expedited on our journey. I subsequently went back out after the trade mission to the Irish American Business Chamber Network in Philadelphia. We'd met and networked. And again, we had people saying, look, I'll take a cask of your whiskey now. So we were on the map, and that was almost a year to the day. So
incredible success, but it is a delicious product. You've put a lot of work into it, but also the story is really strong. So tell us about the product.
Yeah, so I'm a Lough man, Malachy. I spent a good maybe 15, 16 years working out of Dublin and was lucky enough to get a job that took me all over the world. I came home having done my MBA at Trinity, and as part of that we were introduced to the opportunity for Irish whiskey. So that was the start and the genesis of the project. When we started doing the research around brand and how we would position ourselves, the history and the story of brewing in Lough and distilling in Lough was just something else. So we based it all around a particular story from the early 1800s. There was one of Ireland's largest distilleries at the time. It was called the Greer Hall Distillery. It was burnt down in 1837. There was something like the equivalent of £10 million worth of spirits went up in smoke in this particular
hot
fire.
Night around Lough, eh?
It was a hot night, indeed. And I think also, the old legend and repute had it then that the best poaching you'd get was the boys at the shore of Lough Neagh, because the recipe book disappeared off that direction. So we had our anchor for our distillery story. When we looked then further into the brewing side of things, because your typical route to market would be test with spirits that are easy enough and with beer primarily. Lough had an unbelievable history of brewing up until the railway line basically linked Dublin and Belfast, and therefore Guinness didn't need these satellites anymore. Similar to your own hometown of Donegal as well. So I think the last brewery in the town closed in 1921. So you're now seeing a huge opportunity for Irish whiskey to be developed globally, from 12 million cases to 20 million cases that we're told between now and 2025. You have no authentic brewing in the town itself, and an opportunity to recreate that and tap back into the stories, Malachy. So we took the old derogatory term for Lough, that you have a face on you the length of a Lough spade when you're looking miserable, and we turned that on its head. So we called the brewery Spade Town. We contract brewed, got a few beers out to market using some of the best in Northern Ireland, up in Randallstown with Get Our Brewed and with Frankie and Islands Distillery. And that got our products out to test the market. So everything from there has allowed us to ground the story based on starting point with the brewery. And then when we moved to the Lough, the stories around Lough Neagh and what brings us to, I guess, an alignment with St. Patrick's Day, with Coney Island specifically on the Lough, which you can visit by boat from Kennigo or indeed from Mahary, or indeed on your own boat if you have one. The stories of Coney Island are legendary. By repute, there was an old sandbank there going back, way back centuries. And you could walk from the Mahary side of the Lough all the way out to Coney Island. And legend and repute has it that St. Patrick visited Coney Island in his time. There are all sorts of artefacts on there. I think Lord Charlemont, who owned the island, he's buried on that, the Viscount, I think. So we based our stories around Coney Island. So our anchor product will be Coney Island Irish whiskey. That'll be a whiskey that we will distill ourselves and we will lay down, and that's going to be an 18-year product before it's ever released to the market. So that's our super premium. And in the meantime, as we ramp up our plans for brewery and distillery, we've just secured a lease in Lough town. We'll be building the first brewery in 100 years in the town and hopefully be open at the end of COVID. Our plans for our distillery on the shores of Lough Neagh are now afoot as well, and we hope to have those properly cooked in the next 6 to 12 months, and then we can properly gear towards our ultimate aim of building this, hopefully, hugely important visitor centre and attraction on the shores of the Lough.
Yeah, because you've so much to see there, you've so much to touch, you can walk the paths that you're discussing. But 1921, the last distillery, now you're talking about opening in 2021, there's something serendipitous about that.
Something.
So in the midst of all this crisis and uncertainty, there's a lot of positivity here.
Yeah, well, we're hoping that, like everything, you take a gamble, you take a punt. So we're hoping that we've got the timing right. We would have been long down this path already had COVID not kicked in. So literally, when I came back from the States, almost a year to the day, the entire project went on hold. Everything that we built up in terms of supply line, even down to sourcing bottles, and actually what you're looking at are the prototypes, even down to the originals, we had to stop because there was no market, zero certainty, and certainly no route for a new product into the market. By repute, the big boys all shut down a lot of their R&D. So Jameson's went back to what Jameson's knew, and et cetera, et cetera. So the notion of launching in that environment, while attractive in some regard, if you like risk, wasn't a particularly qualified one for us. So we're now at a stage where we think, we're hopefully coming at the tail end of what's been quite a horrific year for everyone. We think we're timing it right. We're certainly going to have the brew pub, brew cafe offering in Lurgan Town Centre ready by June, and everything else then flows from that, Malachi. And the hope is we're ready so that when people get out, people talk about the roaring 20s, and some of these cocktails that I'm going to make are all tied back to the 1920s and that roaring time. So hopefully that bit of serendipity is there. 100 years later, we get the same thing again.
No, it's a great story, and I wish you every success. What I wonder is, we've heard about the States, and the appetite is really strong there for this product. How accessible is it for me and the person at home watching to get our hands on some of your products?
So the beers are in stock in most, certainly all the wine shop and the wine company stores in Northern Ireland. Local off sales as well. So we've had that, and we've kept that going through the pandemic. It's the sort of thing where you just want to keep that little bit of brand awareness and just keep going. So they're available now. In terms of the spirits, because we're literally 3 weeks from reconstituting the project, we would have spirits ready for the market by the summer. The whiskey's slightly different because our entire gearing with the whiskey was towards an export market, starting with the eastern seaboard of the United States. So again, our target is to have some whiskey to market by the end of probably September, October. But what we'll definitely be at scale for St. Patrick's Day next year. And that'll be both locally and internationally.
Well, I am the only lucky one here to be with you. Sorry folks, but I am in a very privileged position. Great product. Now you're going to teach us the art of mixology. A few, as you say, moments from the roaring 20s. Hopefully we're roaring into great 2020s here. What are you going to create for us?
So I'm going to make 5 different drinks. I'm going to keep them nice and simple and basic. There'll be no Tom Cruise flinging of anything around. There'll be no flames. Although I often say I'm the same dimensions as Tom Cruise for anyone who suspects I'm too short. We're going to make some gin-based cocktails and some whiskey-based cocktails. I'm going to start with a gimlet, which is a very, very simple cocktail to mix. Also quite a potent cocktail because the flavours of the gin tend to get hidden inside the syrup and the lime juice. I'm then going to move on to a couple of whiskey-based cocktails. I'm going to make an old-fashioned, which again is very, very easy to make. I'm going to make a whiskey sour, which has some ingredients that people wouldn't typically associate with maybe a cocktail at home. I'll make a New York sour, which is just a variation of the theme. And as I said, the old-fashioned is nice and straightforward. And then I'm going to finish it with a French 75, which is another gin and champagne-based cocktail. But we'll probably rename them as we go, Malachi. So the first one I'm going to do is a St. Patrick's Day gimlet. So this is typically 2 parts gin, 1 part lime juice, and then top it with soda water. So I'll just set that there out of my way. So this was called in the 20s gin, a spot of lime and soda. Some people swore by a particular type of lime juice in making this, Rose's lime cordial. But any particular lime juice will do. If you're into mixing or making your own, you can squeeze fresh lime, doesn't really matter. You can buy some of that but fresh is always better than cordial. So what we do is we take our gin shop. So I'm going to use, this is our Banshee gin, which is targeted, as I say, at the export market. We take 60 mils of gin and we'll pop that into it's effectively a double gin.
I can see that, it's very generous.
Which is why I mentioned that this is particularly potent in its own right. What I've done is I've pre-mixed the lime, which I have some fresh lime over here. And I like this particular sugar syrup Monine, but anyone, you can make up your own sugar syrup if you've got a particular one that you fancy.
The sugar syrup, is it easy to get in the supermarkets?
Yeah, these are all stock items. You'll pick them up in any supermarket. Some of the local guys will do it as well. So I've pre-mixed 15 ml of each of those into this particular vessel. So I'm just gonna pop those in. And effectively, that's our ingredients for the gimlet. Nice and simple.
Simple as that.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pop on the top of this shaker.
Here's your Tom moment. Don't let us down.
I know, I'm not flinging anything. And I'm hoping I don't spill it either. So you just give this a nice shake. This is a nice simple cocktail that you can serve either on the rocks or just straight up. Why I say it's particularly potent is the actual accompaniments with the spirit completely mask the flavour of the spirit and the taste of it. So even if you had a particularly nasty looking gin or a particularly nasty flavoured gin, the syrup and the sweetness in that will completely take the taste away. So I wouldn't recommend that as a breakfast cocktail, but it's the sort of thing you drink and you wouldn't know, and before you know it, you have a double gin down you.
Yeah.
So that, and you just garnish that with a little bit of lime. You know, some people float, and that, very simple, is a gimlet. Next up, Malachy, I'm going to do a Shamrock New York Sour. It's a variation on a theme of the whiskey sour, which we'll do at the end. I'm going to skip one of the ingredients, which is egg white, and I'm just going to use the spirit elements of it as well. So this is slightly different, and probably a couple of conversational points. You know, what makes a good cocktail? The primary thing is proportionality. So if you get a measurement, and everyone likes an extra dollop now and again, but if it's a 50 ml measure, use a 50 ml measure. If it's 25 ml of a particular mixer, use that as well. Okay. Even some things when we make the whiskey sour at the end, it's around, you know, shaking with ice, shaking without ice. You know, they do have an actual impact on the taste, the flavour, the mouthfeel of the actual drink.
So don't get overexcited.
Don't get overexcited. It'd probably be hard if you've had 3 or 4 of these not to get overexcited, but...
well, I like the title of this one.
So this is a Shamrock New York Sour.
Perfect. It's perfect for St. Patrick's Day. So let's hear how you create this.
So what you would do typically with this one, you want a whiskey that's got a wee bit more depth to it. So you're looking for something a bit more aged. Some people would use a rye whiskey or a bourbon. So for the purposes of this, we'd use the 6-year aged Irish whiskey that we have. And again, people will have their own favourites, but you're looking for, you know, it's the equivalent between a Black Bush, Red Bush. It's that type of, you know, Jameson 10 or, you know, whatever people like. So have a decent, good sort of solid whiskey as the base of this. And what we want here is 50 ml of that.
Again, that's a double measure.
That's a double measure. So, well, no, one and a half, I think, in our, it's 35, isn't that right? Okay. So we want to take that and we're going to pop that into one of our mixing glasses here. So we're going to pop some ice into the glass. We'll take our whiskey. Next up, what we want is 35 ml of lemon juice. So I've already pre-mixed that into here, or pre-set it into here, should I say. So I'm just going to put a little bit more on. I think that might have been a little bit less than it called for. So again,
pre-squeezed lemon juice.
Pre-squeezed. And again, you can buy this. These are supermarket shelf type things, so easy enough cut.
But are you better squeezing it at home?
I think so. But anything fresh and done right is better, and they're not that difficult to do either. I mean, take 5 or 10 minutes over breakfast and do it. Again, I have pre-poured some of our sugar syrup and water, so add that to the mix. And then 2 dashes of Angostura bitters. And if you don't have those, they're not overly critical. They just add a little bit of depth. And again, it's just something it'll complement the whiskey.
Again, easy enough to pick up?
Easy enough. Again, supermarket, a little bit on the pricey side, but you can get it in the supermarkets, no problem. So effectively, that is the base for this particular cocktail. So take your cocktail shaker, dump that in, and again, we'll just give that a decent shake over edge. Nothing that needs to be too strenuous, nothing like that. And these are the core ingredients of your normal whiskey sour, Malachy. So the only difference being we would have an egg white in it, but we'll come on to that when we're ready to go. So with that reasonably well shaken, all you want to do then is strain this over your rocks. So. gives us our base. And then last but not least, to make it a New York sour, you take
There's actually a beautiful perfume of this one.
it's nice. You take 25 ml of a dry red wine. It can be anything that you have. Any particular red wine will do it, but the recommendation is a dry red wine. And all you want to do is just float that on top, like so. Nice and easy.
Beautiful.
Set that there.
And a sprig of shamrock.
A shamrock, ideally. They typically will call for a little bit of orange and a cherry.
Wow.
And that is a New York sour. And in our world for today, it's a shamrock New York sour.
So round 3.
Round 3 then, yeah. Given that we won't have a St. Patrick's Day parade, and given it's the tradition and all that, I thought we would jump into a very traditional whiskey cocktail called the Old Fashioned, and let's have an Old Fashioned parade.
Okay.
So this one is probably the easiest out of the lot to make. Again, you just need a cobbler, whiskey glass, tumbler. And all we're really doing here to get started is we're going to mix some sugar and some water. So if you have a sugar cube, sugar lump, some people prefer to use like Demerara sugar, things like that. But all you're doing is putting in a couple of spoonfuls and just mixing it up. I like to use a wee bit of soda water.
Okay,
Just gives it a wee bit more of a, a dryness with that little bit of saltiness in it. And all we want to do here is just mix that until the sugars dissolve. I've probably overloaded a little bit on the sugar, so I won't delay. But all you want to be doing here is just stirring that, Neagh, until you've got effectively a sugar water. So some people just cheat on this and go straight to sugar syrup. But the traditional way of making it is to take these and effectively just dissolve them down.
Okay, and it doesn't take that long, right?
No, nice and simple. Now, Angostura bitter for some people is a critical part of this. I'm not a big fan of it in this particular one because it just does a little bit, for me on the whiskey anyway, it just gives it a little bit of an angle that everyone's palate's different. But typically again, just another 1 or 2 dashes of Angostura bitter. And give that another quick swirl. And we'll get our sugars a little bit more dissolved. Some people actually drink this hot, would you believe?
Oh.
There's a variation on our hot whiskey.
A day like this?
A day like this actually, yeah, be all right. So we'll take that as a given that's dissolved rather than we'll not draw it out. Any whiskey's good for this. Effectively what you're doing is you're sweetening it, so as we all know, a hot whiskey, when we're maybe feeling a little bit down, the sugars will help with that, and as I say, the bitters just give it that little bit of a side angle. So all we want to do here is draw out, again, 1.5 ounces, depending on your palate. You can go with a double, you can go with a single, it's completely up to you in Old Fashioned. And from that, you can serve it on the rocks, you can serve it straight up. So what we'll do is we'll stick in a few cubes. We'll just add our whiskey. And then for simple garnish on this, a little bit of lemon rind. Again, just release the oils into the top of it, just let the essences come onto the top of the drink. And then again, just garnish with a little bit of orange and a little cherry on the top. And the final piece, as I struggle to set that on, it's just a little bit of orange rind into the drink itself.
Lovely.
And that gives you that nice orange citrusy flavour. And that is an Old Fashioned St. Patrick's Parade. Okay, Neagh, so next up, I'm going to make another gin-based cocktail.
Okay.
And it's called the French 75, so of course this being St. Patrick's Day, let's make it the Irish 75. This was actually named, would you believe it or not, in World War I. So a lot, as I said at the start, these cocktails are kind of trying to draw simple, easy to make cocktails from around that sort of period, that roaring 20s that we talked about. This was a cocktail that was conceived in around the time of World War I, and it was named as such after a particular weapon that the French had, a 75mm gun.
Okay.
And I don't know whether that was to do with how potent it was or how unpotent it was. But again, a big favourite in New York at the time, also known as a 75 cocktail. And its constituent parts are effectively gin, champagne, and some other mix with that to bring the flavours out. But
Okay.
it's primarily a gin-based cocktail.
Well, the clue is often in the name, so I suspect this is going to be a strong one.
I think it's reasonably strong, okay, yeah, but the champagne, the bubbles of champagne kind of give it that wee bit more of a kick into you, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
The alcohol's getting around the system a lot quicker, so if you want something for a nice little pickup, this is a good one to have, I think. So, starting with a double shot of gin, and we'll put that into our shaker. Again, I've just pre-measured out the lemon juice.
The lemon juice is a staple for all of these, right?
Lemon and lime. So
Yeah.
you find your citrus, and the easier ones tend to have lemon and lime. Some will go down another route. You know, there's different types of syrup, so you can get complex on it, but by and large, they're the same constituent components. You have your base alcohol, potentially a complementary alcohol, your mixers that'll go along with that to draw flavours out. And then your glass is actually important as well. So this one we serve in a champagne glass, where you might have, in a couple of the previous cocktails, I'd have been maybe touching the rind around the edge of the glass or squeezing the oils out. It's just to give a bit more flavour depth to it. So you even get this, when we put the garnish on this, we were using a little bit of lemon rind and we were touching the edges of that. So actually when you draw the glass to your nose, you're getting the nasal perfume of the lemon before the actual champagne and gin.
So
and
it's
the
hitting
mix
all the
combined.
senses.
It's hitting all the senses.
And before you hit the floor, right?
Before you hit the floor, So I've got another 10 ml of simple syrup as well, so that's our sugar syrup just in there. So again, they're all, as you pointed out, Malachi, they're all pretty much, you know, they're a similar base, similar type of cocktail. So with this one, oh, excuse me. Same again, we
You
shake
know you were
this.
4 in there.
Sorry?
You would know you were 4 in there, Ron.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We're starting to feel it a little bit. So again, just a straightforward shake. And then these things are very, very handy. You don't need to do anything else other than strain from this point. So, into our champagne flute. Nice coloration on this as well. It's kind of a nice lemony colour. And then what we do is we take a champagne or Prosecco. For the purposes of this, we've just got a little bottle of Prosecco. And all we do is top this one up. A little bit of bubbles in it. Take a little piece off our lemon rind. Again, just a little squeeze. A little tickle around the edges. And that is an Irish / French 75.
So Vernon, before we prepare our final cocktail of our little St. Patrick's Day soiree here this evening, what about those people who choose not to have a drink? Are there any alternatives on the market for them to enjoy?
There are indeed, Malachi. Some local produced stuff as well, non-alcoholic gins, non-alcoholic liqueurs, very much a big portion and segment of the market. So again, easily purchased in any local off license or indeed supermarket.
Great,
Plenty
so
of options.
what have you planned for our final drink of the evening?
So our last one, we'll go for a whiskey sour. Variation on the theme that we seen earlier with the New York whiskey sour. One replacement of one ingredient for another, so we take the red wine out of this and we add an egg white to this particular one. So we're just going to shake up the same ingredients. We'll use our cocktail shaker here. The egg white should give it a bit more frothiness, a bit more foam to it, and then we finish that off with a little bit of garnish and a bit of Angostura bitter.
Brilliant. So the good thing about, and thank you for doing it, you've made it so simple for people to enjoy these at home, to prepare them at home.
Yeah, they're all pretty easy to make. I mean, you can be as complex with these things as you wish, you know. And for me, they're a particular flavour that I like in whiskey cocktails and gin cocktails, Malachi. So hopefully they're easy. You know, you can pick up the equipment easily enough. The spirits are all there, and you can use any spirit you like for them. So we'll kick off with this one. As I say, pretty straightforward. Any whiskey will do for the base on this. So we'll take 50 ml of your preferred whiskey. And again, I've pre-measured out some lemon juice. So we go with 35 ml of lemon juice.
Okay.
And then we also go with 12.5 ml of 2:1 sugar syrup. Okay. So we've rattled this up with a little bit of sugar here because we ran out of the Monin stuff. So we're hoping that that's going to be palatable. Well, I'm sure it will be.
Of course, I'm in no doubt.
And we'll add our egg white. And last but not least, Angostura bitters, just 2 little drops. And we'll give this a really good vigorous shake. Some people prefer to shake without ice because it gives it a more frothy mouthfeel with the egg.
Okay.
But for the purposes of this, we'll give this a good 15-20 seconds, Melody.
Lovely. You're teasing us, Vernon, with that slow pour.
Thank you, Molly. I've been building to it. And your garnish for this one, same as the previous one, a little bit of lemon rind. If you have a chunk of lemon rind, just again give it a squeeze, let the oils and let the citrus break onto that. A little bit of lemon rind. And finish it off, a little bit of orange and a little cocktail cherry on it. And that is our 17th of March Whiskey Sour Malaga.
Lovely. Well, I'm going to suggest you push that a little bit closer to me.
Sure.
As I thank you, Vernon, for sharing these recipes with us for you to enjoy at home for a festive St. Patrick's Day. You've made it really simple, and of course, people can have a really fun and enjoyable time at home. Don't forget to drink sensibly, be drink aware.
Drink aware indeed.
And listen, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks very much.
To you
All the
and
best.
to you.